You know how we tend to think of classic stories as being kind of set in stone? Untouchable, right? Well, what if they're not? Today, we're going to look at how one writer took a centuries-old play and, through this incredible act of creative rebellion, turned its villain into a revolutionary hero.
So let's really dig into that. I mean, what does happen when the character who's always been silenced, the one labeled a monster, finally gets the microphone? Because as we're about to find out, the answer? Well, it can change absolutely everything.
Our story kicks off with a true giant of English literature, William Shakespeare, and his famous play, The Tempest. And for a long, long time, it's been read through a very specific lens, one that's deeply tied to the age of European exploration and empire building.
So in the original play, the power dynamic is, well, it's crystal clear. You've got Prospero, the European magician who lands on an island and just takes over. And then there's Caliban, the native of the island, who's painted as this savage, almost subhuman creature. In Shakespeare's world, Prospero's rule isn't just accepted. The whole play basically frames it as the natural order of things, like this is just how it's supposed to be.
Okay, but fast forward a few centuries, and a totally new voice crashes the party. We're talking about the Martinican writer Aimé Césaire. In 1969, he picks up his pen and decides to write back, creating his own play called A Tempest. And it's not just some random adaptation, it is a direct, shot-for-shot response to Shakespeare.
And this, right here, is the absolute key. Césaire isn't just tweaking the story, he's hijacking the entire narrative. He completely flips the camera around to tell the story from the point of view of the people who were conquered, the voices that were totally erased in the original.
Now, there's actually a really cool academic term for this, counter-discourse. The easiest way to think about it is as a kind of literary rebellion. I mean, imagine taking one of the most foundational texts of an empire and using its own characters and its own plot to dismantle the very ideas that empire was built on. It's a powerful way of asking the most important question of all: who really gets to tell the story here? And the most radical, game-changing part of Césaire's whole rewrite, it all comes down to one character. He takes the guy Shakespeare painted as a monster and transforms him into the hero of an anti-colonial revolution.
Okay, just look at this comparison. It really lays the whole transformation bare. On the one hand, you've got Shakespeare's Caliban, who's basically a subhuman, natural-born servant. But Césaire's Caliban? A totally different story. He is politically conscious, he's filled with this righteous anger, and he is reborn as an anti-colonial fighter. This isn't just a simple character update. This is a full-on political reinvention.
And wow, does this one line illustrate the change perfectly. With just one single powerful word choice, Césaire completely reframes the entire relationship. Caliban refuses to accept the master-servant dynamic. By calling Prospero colonizer, he's not just insulting him, he's naming the entire system of repression and basically declaring war on it.
And just like that, with this new identity, Caliban becomes so much bigger than just one character on a magical island. He becomes this global symbol for very real, very human struggles, representing colonized people everywhere who are fighting for their freedom.
But Césaire doesn't stop with just reinventing one character. Oh no, he uses his play to put the entire system of colonialism on trial. He pulls back the curtain on the romanticized idea of empire to show what's really going on underneath. Césaire's play is basically screaming, hey, this was never some noble, civilizing mission. It was a violent takeover, plain and simple. In fact, he pretty much puts Prospero on trial in the play, building the case against him piece by piece. So, first up on the charge sheet? Land theft. The play makes it super clear. This island belonged to Caliban. Prospero didn't discover a thing, he invaded. Next charge, economic exploitation. We see Prospero forcing Caliban into what is essentially slave labor, making a profit off of him. This right here was the brutal engine of the whole colonial project. And finally, Césaire zeroes in on cultural domination. Prospero imposes his rules, his way of seeing the world, and, this is huge, his language, systematically trying to erase Caliban's own culture. And that right there brings us to the final battleground in this whole story. Césaire shows us that the fight for freedom isn't just about land or labor. It's also a fight over words, over who gets to speak and who is forced to listen. So Césaire breaks down this linguistic resistance into two key steps. First, you've got abrogation. Think of it as the rejection. It's simple, it's powerful. Caliban just flat out refuses to be defined by Prospero's language. But then comes step 2, appropriation. Now this is the creative part, the remix. It's where you take the colonizer's own language and you twist it, you turn it into a weapon to curse, to resist, and ultimately to demand your freedom.
Okay, so at the end of the day, why does any of this matter? I mean, who cares about rewriting a 400-year-old play, right? Well, it matters a lot, because the act itself is this huge, profound statement about power, about history, and about whose stories we decide are important.
What Césaire is doing is giving a voice back to what scholars call the subaltern. It's a fancy word, but it just means anyone who's been pushed to the margins, you know? The people history tends to forget. By giving Caliban a mind, a political voice, and real feelings, he's giving him back the very humanity that the original play took away from him.
And that is the incredible power of this whole counter-discourse thing. It just cracks open the authority of these so-called untouchable classics, and it forces us to see that history isn't just one single story. It's made of many. It completely flips who you're rooting for and lets us, for the first time, really feel the emotional weight of the struggle.
When you boil it all down, Césaire's play is just a masterclass in how to rewrite the empire's story. It so cleverly uses Shakespeare's own world to lay bare the brutal realities of colonial domination, language oppression, and imperial exploitation for everyone to see.
And that brings us right back to where we started. Césaire picked The Tempest. But think about it. How many other classic stories have these silenced voices just lurking in the background? So I want to leave you with this question to chew on. If you had the pen, what story would you rewrite? And who would finally get to be the hero?